with the remarkable, extraordinary Dr. Carol Swain, the author now of, among her other really important books, a very easy read and very timely one, namely The Adversity of Diversity. I cannot commend it highly enough, and I'm delighted to have this full hour to talk with Carol about it. Carol, you go through so many different parts of what we're currently being afflicted by.
Right.
I mean, sort of your own personal experience, but also what you witnessed and what you've so, I think, courageously called out in terms of really Marxist efforts to take down our country. One manifestation of which, of course, was what Black Lives Matter did under the guidance of self-described trained Marxists.
Right.
In the aftermath of George Floyd's demise. Talk to us a little bit about that and what the most important takeaways are from it.
Well, Frank, you may recall in 2016, before George Floyd's death, that Black Lives Matter was around. They were getting attention. And I did a CNN interview where I was debating a woman named Areva Martin, who is a LA attorney. And this was after the 5 Dallas police officers had been slain. And I did research on Black Lives Matter, and I noticed that their website was all about Marxist goals, and it had almost nothing to do with Black people. And so I went on that CNN program, and I said that they were a Marxist organization and a destructive force in our society, and I urged people to go to that website. That fueled it added more fuel to a firestorm that I had created a year before when I criticized Islam. And that was a factor in my making my decision to leave the university, because all of a sudden I had Muslims after me. I had the LGBT community. Never had a problem with the LGBT community until I wrote an opinion piece criticizing Islam. And then all of a sudden they manufactured lies. But the Black...
Last time I checked, the authoritative version of Islam Sharia is not so keen on, homosexuals or LGBT types, are they?
Well, the homosexuals on campus thought that they were bosom buddies, but they manufactured lies. And the Black people on campus were silent. But then when I criticized Black Lives Matter, I united the campus as far as people feeling like that, that I was too right-wing, too extreme for the campus, and also
This was Vanderbilt University, right?
Yeah, and so I'm saying all of this stuff was taking place. But Black Lives Matter, I believe I was the first high-profile person to publicly say and recognize that they were Marxists. And I went to that website. Now, they've changed their website probably 10 times now. But back then, it was raw, and it was very clear what they were about. So they are a Marxist-based organization. And we can fast forward to 2020. 2020, after George Floyd's death, we have a chapter in this book, The Adversity of Diversity, that talks about how Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste, that they didn't mourn George Floyd. I mean, they celebrated the opportunity to use his death and to create a martyr to ram through programs and initiatives that would never have seen the light of day had it not been for George Floyd's death. And I, along with many other Americans, were deeply disturbed by the riots. I believe it was over 50 straight days that there were riots taking place in some American city after George Floyd's death. And it just agitated me because I saw corporations, one after another, every day, they were giving millions of dollars that, became billions of dollars to Black Lives Matter, to groups like Antifa, to organizations and programs that I knew could never bring about any kind of racial reconciliation or healing, because they were Marxist-based. They were rooted in conflict theory. So I was in great turmoil, and around this time, the Council on National Policy, based in D.C., they invited me to speak along with Bob Woodson and Star Parker. And during the time when I'm grappling with what do I need to say, I heard in my spirit, and religious people will know what I mean by that, unity. And I said, unity training. And I got up the next morning, ran to the computer, tried to buy the domain name. It was gone, but I purchased domain name Unity Training Solutions. And a few months later, I incorporated a business, Unity Training Solutions, that is based on E Pluribus Unum, out of many one. And it talks about how we can educate people about civil rights and about the laws of the land, but to do it in a way that respects each individual, that no one is singled out because of their race or their sex or their nationality. The job of organizations and corporations, they have missions, they have purposes. They're not supposed to be social engineering agencies. And so what I hope to do is to work with CEOs and leaders about ways that they can get back to their original missions, that they can adhere to civil rights laws, the laws of the land, but those laws of the lands don't discriminate on the basis of race. They need to adhere to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. And part of what my book argues is that when the Supreme Court struck down race-based admissions in college universities, college and university admissions, that it was a signal to every DEI, CRT program in America because they discriminate in the same way. And fortunately, many white people are realizing that they are protected by civil rights laws, they are protected by the Equal Protection Clause, and they are successfully filing lawsuits. They're learning how to document discrimination. And I believe that that's positive for America because we would be far better off if we adhered to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and its extensions and the Equal Protection Clause. And what they have done hurts every racial and ethnic minority.
We have to take a final break. We're going to be right back with more with Carol Swain on this key point. Follow the law, follow the Constitution. We'll be right back. Swain is with us for our final segment of this very special interview. And Carol, I just want to pick up on what you said a moment ago. The thing that is so infuriating, I think, to those of us who genuinely seek to move to a post-racial America, who were probably many of us, not myself, but many of us voting for Barack Obama precisely because we thought that's what would come of his presidency.
I didn't think that, and I didn't.
Well, you and I both, but I think a lot of other people did and sought that and still seek it. And yet what we've been induced to do, as you said so well, and as is just laid out brilliantly in your book, The Audacity of Diversity, is we've been essentially bait and switched. Instead of the Constitution of the United States 14th Amendment, which provides, basically for the equal protection of people without regard to race or other considerations, and the Civil Rights Act, which very explicitly prohibits such discrimination. We've been induced to go down the road of what amounts to reverse racism with this DEI agenda that you've just so brilliantly dissected for us. And I just wanted to say, again, the courage that it takes to say these things in this environment is extraordinary, though I am heartened. I don't think we've touched on this, but I am heartened that there are now reports that companies are deciding that this DEI business is a loser, and they're firing the people they hired to become kind of political commissars, imposing this agenda on their companies. Talk very quickly about that, if you would.
I can say that those companies are making the right decision, but they still need to understand the civil rights laws of this nation. There's nothing wrong with diversity, but they can have diversity without discrimination. We've had it for decades and generations. And when I think about, what they're doing today, especially the Biden administration, where they have all of these people that are not qualified, that they are the worst possible representatives that you could have for racial and ethnic minorities, that they tout, their sexual identity or being the first this or the first that, but they're not qualified for their jobs. That's an insult to every racial, ethnic minority or woman that have worked very hard to prove themselves. All of a sudden, they're making it seem like it's more important to have people in certain categories and groups than to hire the best qualified, and that if you hold racial and ethnic minorities to the same standards, that you're not going to have any. We've had racial and ethnic minorities in positions of power, throughout the 20th century. And there's so many people that have been successful, and they've worked hard, they played by the rules. And we can talk about the U.S. military. The U.S. military used to be the gold standard for integration and diversity, and no one did it like the military. And then all of a sudden, with this social engineering and the CRT and DEI, they have seeped into the military. The military is no longer about providing for domestic and for protecting us from our foreign and domestic enemies. That's not the focus anymore. It's about all of this pride stuff, and the whole idea that they would push their social engineering above the welfare of the American public is just totally ridiculous, and it's so insulting. And I can tell you one thing about affirmative action is that at Princeton, I won 3 national prizes. My work's been cited by the U.S. Supreme Court. By any measure, I am highly accomplished, but my accomplishments, they are discounted. They're discounted because I'm Black, and everyone assumes that if you're Black, or if you're a woman, or if you're an Asian, or if you're a Hispanic, if you are anything other than white, that it has to be because of affirmative action. They can never, it's the racism that says that no racial and ethnic minority can ever be qualified. And the people that go along with this, it is absurd. And it's absurd what's happening in the military, because you have people that have been in it, men, Black, I would say men and women, I guess, but I know about Black men that have achieved the ranks of general, and all of a sudden they're embracing the affirmative action argument that the only reason they're there is because of their race, and that if it hadn't been for the lowered new standards that they want through DEI, that they wouldn't have that position.
Yeah. And as it happens, a guy who President Biden has nominated to become the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, is a perfect example of that, I think.
Well, the problem with him is that, that he has totally embraced all of the nonsense that's come out of the Biden administration, where they're just focusing on, transgenders in the military, or women in combat situations where the data suggests that they are not equipped for that. Maybe they can fly airplanes. There are certain jobs that it doesn't matter if you're male or female, but in a combat situation, it does matter.
Yeah, it matters.
And then bringing in foreigners. bringing in
Yeah.
people that are undocumented, putting them in the military where they may have loyalties to their own nation, but telling young people that if they go and risk their lives, that maybe their family will get their legal papers. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is not the America that I once knew.
Yeah, and it's not the military that we need, that's for sure. Carol, just in the closing minute, I just wanted to say something. You mentioned pride and the sort of homosexual expropriation of that term. I heard Pastor Gary Hamrick, who is the pastor of a terrific church in Leesburg, Virginia, talking this weekend about pride as a sin. And it's in the context really of the spiritual warfare that we're in, and you've spoken to this powerfully. Just in the closing 30 seconds, you talked about your own spiritual awakening. How important is that to you in this battle?
For me, I believe God has called me, He situated me, and He has empowered me to do what I do. In fact, Frank, I used to be shy until I had my Christian conversion experience. I had a chance to...
Praise God. Praise God. Carol, we are out of time. I'm so sorry. Thank you for being unshy and feeling the Lord's hand at work here. God bless you. We'll talk with you again soon, and congratulations on the audacity of diversity. We'll talk to the rest of you next time. Until then, go forth and multiply.
Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
Christian parents are on the hook today because they have to identify the threats to the value system that's being taught to their children in public schools, and their job is to protect their kids from these influences.
Tune in for Family Talk with Dr. James Dobson, weekdays at 6:30 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. on American Family Radio.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into our program. God's blessings to you all.
90.5 KTXG, Greenville, Dallas.
Tons of apps on your phone. But do you have the AFR app?
Well, I don't think I can download it.
No worries. The AFR app is available not only for Apple and Android users, but also on Amazon Alexa and Roku.
But I only want to listen to music, and
The new music option allows you to stream music anytime you want.
I'm downloading it now.
Download the AFR app today at afr.net.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The Supreme Court may have struck his student loan forgiveness plan, but that's not stopping President Joe Biden. The Biden administration has launched a new plan called the SAVE Plan, something that involves a new income-driven repayment plan to replace the plans already available to borrowers. Blaine Parker of Job Creators Network Foundation says the president is just trying to get around the Supreme Court ruling, and that's only one problem.
This plan is actually going to cost more over the next decade than the plan that the Supreme Court just struck down.
Well, there's been a big fight over where the nation should get its energy. The Biden administration wants to move away from fossil fuels and look to things such as wind turbines and solar panels. People on the other side of the argument think we should go after more domestic oil and gas sources. Even if we did that, permitting could still be an issue, especially in states such as Pennsylvania, where Luke Bernstein of Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce is calling for permitting reform.
The biggest obstacle we have in front of us right now has been permitting reform. It simply shouldn't take longer to get a permit than it does to build a project.
Last year, Pennsylvania was second only to Texas when it came to natural gas production. Portland schools continued to take diversity, equity, and inclusion to extremes. Robert Thornton has more.
Portland schools are utilizing equitable grading practices where they accept late work without penalty and even avoid giving zeros to students when they are caught cheating. Fox News contributor and former teacher Leo Terrell talked about this unthinkable policy on the Fox News channel.
They still think there's systemic discrimination. That's the reason why. Racial disparity. They're trying to even up the level playing field based on race.
He discussed his reaction if he were asked to not give a student a 0, but a 50 if they didn't turn in an assignment.
I couldn't teach. I couldn't do my job as a teacher. And basically, Ainsley, during COVID, we saw these declines in proficiency in math and reading. When you don't require kids to do their homework, when they're allowed to cheat.
Political scientist and author of the new book, The Adversity of Diversity, Dr. Carol Swain appeared on AFR and said the left believes that racial and ethnic minorities are inferior.
That if you hold them to the same standards, they cannot compete, even though you had people competing, getting into exclusive schools before we enacted this regime that became on steroids after George Floyd's death.
And she offered some advice to fight against the DEI craze.
People need to know, especially white people, Asians, need to know that they are protected by the U.S. Civil Rights Act, that it's not okay to discriminate against anyone.
I'm Robert Thornton.
A Catholic school in Worcester, Massachusetts continues to make headlines over its new policy requiring students to use the names and pronouns assigned to them at birth. Members of the LGBTQ community say it's not fair and will call students to remain in the closet. But talking about this on AFR's Today's Issues program, Dr. Frank Turek said the Catholic school is in the right here.
If you don't like it, don't go to a Catholic school. I mean, this is a private school. You can do what you want in a private school.
A new report from the National Park Service shows the economic contributions that national parks make to the nation's economy. Last year, 312 million park visitors spent an estimated $24 billion in local gateway regions while visiting National Park Service lands across the country. These expenditures supported a total of 378,000 jobs and $50 billion in economic output in the national economy. In final news, a new way to treat vision loss helps Amanda see again. Fox's Lisa Brady takes us home.
Phil Durst lost his vision in one eye and developed severe headaches after a work accident in 2017 when chemicals splashed in his eye. The 51-year-old is one of 4 patients to undergo a new experimental procedure. It takes stem cells from the healthy eye, expands and grows them on a graft in a lab, and transplants them into the injured eye. It's the first study in the U.S. to test out the new technique in the hopes of treating corneal disorders that occur following chemical burns and other eye issues. Results from early-stage research published last week in the Journal of Science Advances, a larger study is underway.
Find more news on AFN.net. Thanks for listening.
The Encore 2023 series of listener favorites concludes this week on Truth for Life. You'll find out how in God's economy your weakness is an attribute, how keeping your promises is vitally important, and how the right focus can keep you steady in a confusing world. Listen to Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Truth for Life, weekday mornings at 11:30 Central on AFR and online at afr.net.
Thank you for joining Alan Jackson Ministries.
We loaded our cars, went to the hospital tonight, looked through the windows into the nursery. There's a bunch of little people over there, kind of pink, and technically they've got everything they need for life, but they got a lot of growing to do. And if you've imagined that tenure or years in church is the same as growing up in the Lord, you're confused. We have to continue to choose the Lord. We have to decide we want to grow up. We have to have a hunger for the Word of God. We have to be willing to yield and listen to the Spirit of God. You can't choose or tolerate ungodliness or carnality without understanding it impedes your ability to grow up.
Alan Jackson Ministries believes the church is an initiative of Jesus, and we intend to get behind that initiative in any way possible. Messages like what you're about to hear are not just broadcasted through radio and television. They're also available as podcasts and streamed online globally. It's all funded through supporters who believe in the mission. Together, our goal is to help individuals become more fully devoted followers of Christ and to lead with their faith in every area. Search Alan Jackson Ministries to learn more. Pastor Alan has a brand new book called Lessons from Peter, with devotionals inspired by Peter's life. Here he is to tell you about it.
I just got back from Israel. I made a special attempt this time while I was in the land to visit some places that were unique to the story of Peter. You know, of all the characters in the New Testament that are our familiar friends, Peter may be my favorite. It may be because he often engages his mouth, it seems, before he engages his brain. When when he sees Jesus walking across the Sea of Galilee, he said, Lord, if it's you, I want to walk on the water too. And then he gets out of the boat and he thinks, what have I done? Well, that tended to be a pattern in Peter's life, and I have a bit of that tendency myself. This is a remarkable story. He meets Jesus when Peter's a young man, most probably a teenager. He's a fisherman. Jesus borrows his boat for a bit, and out of that interaction, he gets the invitation of a lifetime. Follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of men. And Peter inexplicably walks away from his business, his friends, his family, his routine, and he follows this itinerant rabbi. His life is never the same again. He follows Jesus for 3 years through his most remarkable ministry. After Jesus' death and resurrection and then his ascension, it's the force of Peter's personality and character. He becomes the anchor of that church in Jerusalem when it's trying to establish himself. It's Peter that the Holy Spirit sends to Caesarea when it's time for the non-Jewish world to begin to open their hearts to the Jesus story. It's Peter that begins the dispersion of the Jesus story beyond the city of Jerusalem. And it's Peter that writes those 2 letters that we have at the back of our New Testament from the perspective of a man whose strength is diminished. But marvelous strength that was cultivated fishing in the Sea of Galilee has been diminished by age. The Peter story is so important. We've taken some of our devotionals and we built them into a 90-day devotional for you. So you can follow the story of Peter for a 3-month period in your life. You and I want to become more like him, saying yes to the Lord. Along with that, while I was in Israel, I filmed a video series, a teaching series, giving you some ideas how you and I might take Peter's choices to say yes to Jesus and let him become a more important part of our lives. I believe lessons from Peter will be an important part of your devotional life for these next few months. Enjoy it.
God used Peter, an ordinary man, to change the course of history. And as you read Pastor Allen's new